In January of 2005, Detective Boyle takes Raymond Williams out of general population at Greaterford Prison in Pennsylvania and walks him into interview room D of Philly homicide. The scene is set for a confession to murder.
I guess they would call it staging. Well, then that's what I'm doing. I'm staging a room. I want them to feel uncomfortable. I want their mind racing the minute that they come in here. I said, like I'm sitting here, Detective Bass was here, and Ray was here, and I just said, Ray, do you know why you're here?
Williams replies with a shrug. Then Boyle gets to work, laying out the building blocks in a case for murder.
I took out the DNA report, and I showed him the DNA report. And I said, Ray, we're talking about quadrillion. 18 zeros after the number that says you. And I said, Ray, if you can explain to me how your semen was found in her rectum, we'll take you back to Greaterford.
Raymond Williams offers nary a word of explanation or denial.
It was almost like he got hit in the solar plexus or something. Now he's nervous. And he's nervous because he knows it's over. He knows we have it. So now his mind is racing because he also knows what's coming next. And it didn't even have to be said, but it was going to be said. Ray, the death penalty's coming.
Boyle offers Williams one way out, one way to save his life. The suspect considers, then decides he wants to talk.
We got the typewriter in the room, and we started. I actually started to type. And one of the first questions in the statement was, did you murder Carmen Baracol? Yes. That was the truth. Everything after that was a lie. His story is that he meets Carmen Baracol on the L train coming from Center City out. And while talking on the train, she agrees to have consensual sex with him. And they decide to go down into the park. And that they had come down this path here, where the scene actually took place, which was right down this path, and that they had walked down this path that night.
Boyle doesn't believe Carmen Baracol took the train that night or ever agreed to have sex with Raymond Williams. According to Boyle, this case is about a killer laying in wait and a young woman who never had a chance.
Raymond Williams grabbed her, and whether he used a weapon or he physically assaulted her, punched her, whatever, he got her down into this area with the intent to rape her.
While detectives and prosecutors don't believe Williams' story, they do accept his plea of guilty, in exchange for which Williams avoids execution row and receives a sentence of life with no possibility of parole.
Pennsylvania is one of the few states where a life sentence is life. He will spend the rest of his natural life in jail, so he will never, ever walk the streets of Philadelphia again.
Am I satisfied? Sure, I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied for the fact that Raymond Williams will never rape, never murder anyone in his life again.
While the conviction satisfies investigators, the sentence falls short for Stephen McNamee, a man whose girlfriend was raped and murdered, and then suffered the whispers of neighbors and friends who deemed him guilty.
It's been so many years of being blamed. I already lived the torture. I can't take back all the years of being blamed. That won't happen. I think that he should fry. He shouldn't be allowed to live in prison. I just don't believe that at all. I believe an eye for an eye, and he should die. That's what I believe.
Twilight in the Michigan wilderness, the murmur of a lazy river, and wind whispering in the maple trees. The serene, simple beauty of nature is what draws 36-year-old Jeanette Kirby to this secluded hiking trail. At the end of another workday, she is in the mood for a little exercise and a lot of solitude. There is only one problem. She's not alone in the forest. Around the bend, a beast lurks in the long shadows, with a blade in his hand and lust in its heart. His attack is swift and brutal. Jeanette's cries for help are answered only by the wind, whispering softly to the empty forest. Muriel Kirby's coffee is getting cold. She's waiting for her Jeanette. The two have a date for breakfast. When Jeanette doesn't show and doesn't call, Muriel begins to worry.
I started calling Jeanette's office to talk to her supervisor, and she and I communicated all day long because Jeanette wasn't there, and she didn't answer her phone at home. And that afternoon, I realized something's wrong. This is not Jeanette.
The next day, Muriel and Jeanette's cousin Nancy Bishop recall the wooded trails Jeanette likes to walk.
We immediately thought of Riverbend because we had been with her out there just a couple weekends before that.
In the parking lot next to the Riverbend walking trails, Nancy discovers Jeanette's car. On the windshield, a parking ticket, timestamped just hours after Jeanette was last seen.
At one point there was hope. You know, there's a car. But I knew it didn't look good. I knew there was something drastically wrong.
Some 30 people comb Riverbend Park, hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. Among the searchers, a family friend named Jim Horniak.
I was crisscrossing between a trail and the river. I came up to a fence line that had a gate on it, and it was locked, so I didn't go beyond the fence line. I was going to turn around, and then something told me to go beyond that fence. I followed the fence down to the river and found an opening where I could go around the fence.
Inside the fence line, Horniak continues walking close to the river's edge. To his right, a splash of color catches his eye.
As I was walking, I was looking to my right, and I saw something that was standing out with all the ferns there that was kind of yellowish.
The color that catches Horniak's eye is the maize and blue of the University of Michigan, emblazoned on a pair of running warm-ups. Horniak moves in for a closer look.
And when I got about 4 feet from it, I realized it was a body. I was just totally shocked. I was in Vietnam. I saw a lot of dead bodies, but this really did something to me. And all the time running back, I felt like somebody was watching me.
He was very upset. He came running up to me, and one of the other officers that was present indicated that he had found Jeanette Kirby.
Larry Harrison is the first officer to reach the body of Jeanette Kirby. He notes 3 stab wounds to her chest. The body is photographed and then turned over.
When we initially located Jeanette Kirby, her hands were behind her back, and then once they rolled her over, you could see that she had been bound with police-style flex cuffs.
Police-style flex cuffs, used to bind the victim before killing her. The cuffs provide Harrison with a unique bit of evidence, in a case otherwise bereft of clues. At the crime scene, no weapon, prints, or unknown blood is found at all times. No evidence of semen or other bodily fluids is recovered. The case is barely 24 hours old, with no viable suspects, when Ingham County Police get called out again to Riverbend Park, where a second body has surfaced. On the afternoon of June 13th, 2 canoeists paddle their way through the park. To their right, they see something caught up in underbrush along the shore, and paddle closer. Tangled in the weeds is the body of a young woman.
This was the body of Cynthia Miller. She was located a couple of 100 yards, 200 to 300 yards from where the body of Jeanette Kirby was found.
Miller's body discovered so close to Kirby's fuels fears there is a serial killer on the prowl. County Prosecutor Sam Smith works both cases. After viewing Miller's body, he is convinced there is no connection between the 2 crimes.
It didn't appear that these 2 crimes were necessarily related. For one thing, a body in the river obviously is going to move down that river for a while, and it was clear that that body had moved down the river.
Miller's autopsy reveals she had been in the water at least a month, further distancing the 2 crimes both in time and location. Detectives work the 2 murders separately. Within a few weeks, they got a break in the Miller case. An ex-con named Robert Jones implicates himself and a friend, Earl Fox, in the murder. Each, however, has an alibi for the day Jeanette Kirby was murdered. Sam Smith is not surprised.
What happened in the Kirby case was not there in unknown. Jeanette Kirby was not a prostitute or a woman that hung out with, I guess you could call them lowlights.
700 tips, and more than 5 months after she was killed, Jeanette Kirby's homicide remains unsolved and is relegated to the cold files. There it remains until a single detail about the crime scene creates a spark, a connection, and ultimately a fresh trail for police to follow. Here a story of murder unfolds. The victim, a young woman named Jeanette Kirby, is dragged off a hiking trail and down a ravine. There she is subdued, assaulted, and then stabbed repeatedly. Most unique about this unsolved case, police-style flex cuffs used to bind the victim's hands behind her back. It is a detail that 4 years later resurfaces with a different victim and in a different place. Dusk approaches, and a single woman guns her car down an empty highway. Suddenly, she sees a pickup loom in her rearview mirror. Then, red and white flashers.
So I pulled over when I saw the light in the back mirror, and I sat there, and
waited for him to come to me.
The man steps out of his vehicle, but does not approach the car. The woman, who is asked not to be identified, takes a tentative step towards the man.
All of a sudden, he took out a revolver or a gun and said, "Come here." Then he shot a warning shot into the woods and said again, "Come here."
On the empty highway, the two struggled, the man dragging his victim ever closer to the open door of his pickup.
I thought, wait a minute, you are not getting me into this truck. So I held on the front of his truck. And at that time, other cars was coming by. Shortly after that happened, he actually threw me on the road and said, "Get the hell out of here."
The man jumps back into his truck and flees. The woman picks herself up off the ground, drives home, and phones police. Sergeant Bert Meade catches the call.
She told us he was wearing a baseball cap with a star on it that she thought was affiliated somehow with the law enforcement agency. He was armed with a 9mm handgun. She indicated that he drew this gun on her, and she knew immediately that he meant business.
At the scene, police recover an ejector shell casing from the round fired during the attack. They also make castings of the tire prints left by the suspect's pickup. The victim's description of the vehicle becomes key to tracking the assailant.
This particular vehicle was outfitted with some overhead lights, which are unusual for a civilian vehicle. It had distinctive tires on it. It had a distinctive framework.
Tipsters lead the police to a local service station where a similar truck had been seen gassing up.
They went through the records at the station and found a credit card receipt for purchase of gasoline that this truck and the defendant had used, and we were able to identify him through his credit card receipt.
Police track the suspect, a local named David Dram, to his parents' cabin. Dram's truck matches the tire prints found at the scene, and he himself fits the rough description provided by the victim.
He was in the home, and they asked him if he owned a 9mm handgun, and he acknowledged that he did, and he told me it was hidden under a cushion on the couch, and it was later determined to be the one used and matched with the cartridge that was found at the scene.
Detectives also search Dram's truck and cabin. They find a police cap similar to the ones described by the victim, as well as a knife and a pair of police-style flex cuffs. In cop parlance, this is routinely known as a rape kit.
We're under the impression that these items were to be used to bind and secure this woman after she was kidnapped from that scene.
Detectives place Dram under arrest for attempted kidnapping. When they run a check on the suspect, they discover he is also a volunteer fireman, some 200 miles away in Ingham County. The same county where Jeanette Kirby's body was found in 1986. Meade places a call down to Ingham to tell them their fireman is under arrest. Detective Larry Cece takes Meade's call.
He advises that they've arrested a Holt fireman, that he attempted to make a traffic stop on this lady who tried to abduct.
One piece of information about the alleged attack piques Stacy's interest: the discovery of flex cuffs in Dram's truck. Cuffs similar to the ones used to bind Jeanette Kirby 4 years earlier.
At the time, the only ones that carried flexicus were used with police officers. Didn't carry a second pair of handcuffs they had, so we only issued one. And they thought it very significant that he would have these flexicus.
Stacy wonders if David Dram might be Jeanette Kirby's killer, but can develop no specific links between the two. Meanwhile, Dram's name surfaces in yet another investigation involving yet another attack on a woman a few months earlier. Closing time at Sammy's Lounge. At 30 a.m., a waitress makes her way through a deserted parking lot.
When she went out to her car, she got in and started driving it, and she had the bump of a flat tire.
Ingham County Prosecutor Sam Smith recounts what happens next.
Once we were surprised, there was somebody there to help her. This guy that had been in the bar earlier named David Drahan.
He's talking about Dram, who offers the woman a ride to his house and the use of his phone. According to the woman, once inside the house, Dram drops the Good Samaritan routine.
He appeared with a gun and knife in his hand, with a gun and knife to her head, and said, "You're in trouble now." She was forced back into the bedroom, had her get on the bed, took off her clothes, and raped her several times.
Afraid for her life, the woman does not come forward with the story in 1989.
She believed he told her if she talked to the police, he would kill her, and she absolutely believed it. And if you see David Drahan, it's somewhere around 6'6", 6'7". He's a big, and at that time he was a big, rangy boy. You believe him.
7 months later, with Dram already in custody for the attempted kidnap, the woman shares her story with police. Smith adds rape charges to the charges pending against Dram. He is found guilty in both cases and receives a maximum sentence of 8 years in prison. Cold case detectives, however, are still not happy. The flex cuff linked to the Jeanette Kirby murder is too strong to ignore.
From the hour, I guess you would say, that the Leelanau County Sheriff's Office called, we thought David Drahan is probably the killer of Jeanette Kirby. But what we could do to do that, other than he had flex cuffs over here and there's flex cuffs in our case, that's not very much proof.
It would take 7 more years and the determination of a 76-year-old woman to forge a link between David Drent and the flex cuffs used to kill Jeanette Kirby. In 1986, Jeanette Kirby was the subject of a blitz attack. Her body was found just off a hiking trail in Michigan's Ingham County. Kirby's hands were bound behind her back with flex cuffs, often used by police to secure suspects. 5 years later, a local named David Dram was convicted of an unrelated attempted kidnapping and an unrelated rape. When he was arrested, police found similar style flex cuffs inside Dram's car. The MO is too distinctive to be ignored.
I know of no other cases in the United States where flex cuffs were used. That, in and of itself, was extremely probative, I thought.
Authorities believe David Dram to be Jeanette Kirby's killer. More than 8 years later, however, they are still trying to prove it. 12 years have taken their toll on Muriel Kirby. 12 years of waiting for a knock on the door or the phone to ring for news that the person who killed her daughter has been arrested.
I talked to the sheriff's department several times, enough so that they got tired of me. And they said, this is an old case. You can't expect something every day. I did. I expected something every time I called.
Larry Harrison is the detective on the other end of Muriel Kirby's phone calls. In the spring of 1986, he worked the Kirby crime scene as a street cop. In 1998, he picks up the cold file as a homicide detective. His partner is Pete Ackerley. The two detectives agree in order to solve this case, they must walk down the road of David Dram's past and turn over every stone along the way.
We began interviewing a number of old friends, acquaintances of David Dram's, a number of people that were never interviewed originally back in 1986.
I tried to run down everybody that went to high school with the guy, ever went drinking beer, smoked pot with him, worked with him, was on the fire department with him, knew him socially.
Their walk through David Dram's past brings detectives to the doorstep of a man named Mark Grieco, a man who has been waiting more than a decade to tell his story. In the early 1980s, Mark Grieco was David Dram's roommate. Around the same time, Grieco bought an old police car, one without FM radio. One day, Grieco decided to install one.
I actually had to physically get into the trunk to work underneath the back deck to wire it, and then I saw the plastic bag was stuck between like the inner fender and the outer fender, and I pulled it out and it was a bag of flex cuffs, plastic handcuffs.
According to Grieco, he gave 8 of the flex cuffs to David Dram, but does not know what Dram used them for. Grieco kept the other 2 cuffs for himself.
I worked for a security guard company at that time. Right in the back window of the car was my uniform hat, and I just pulled a couple out, stuck it in my hat, and I gave him the rest.
Grieco used one of the cuffs to tie up the muffler of the car, but was unsure what he did with the other. At the request of police, Mark Grieco rummages through his closets, looking for the missing cuff.
Up in the top of my closet in a plastic bag was that uniform hat, and inside the uniform hat was that flex cuff.
I couldn't believe that after 12 years that he still had this one flex cuff in the brim of his old security hat. I knew immediately this could be the link that we were looking for to finally put the nail in the coffin for David Dram. The cuff provided by Grieco and the one pulled off Jeanette Kirby's body are identical in brand and manufacture. Unfortunately, they are also identical to thousands of other cuffs produced and sold in the United States. Cold case detectives need to find a link between the cuffs, a unique signature that differentiates them from other cuffs in the marketplace. That signature lies not with the plastic cuff itself, but on a small piece of metal embedded inside. Scott Marrier is a forensic tool mark examiner for the state of Michigan.
Tool marks can be unique, and a lot of people do equate it to a fingerprint. What happens is during the manufacturing process, when tools are made, no 2 objects, it doesn't matter what you're making, are completely identical in every way. And so what I do is I look for the microscopic imperfections that are left on various objects to see, if these were cut by the same tool.
In the summer of 1998, Marrier gets a call asking him to compare the Grieco and Kirby cuffs. Marrier focuses on the small metal tabs used as a locking mechanism for the cuffs, and the small scratches found on each tab, tool marks created when the tab was machine cut at the processing plant.
These were wonderful tool marks, both in quantity and quality, and it was actually a very easy identification to make between the metal tab that was removed from the flex cuff that was found on Jeanette Kirby and the one that could be associated to Mr. Dreheim.
The match tells Marrier that the tabs were cut in the same plant by the same machine. That, however, is only half the battle. Mark Bloomer is First Assistant Attorney General for the state of Michigan, and one of the men who will have to present the flex cuff evidence to a jury.
It's very analogous to using forensic DNA. It's not enough to simply say there's a match, because then you have to know how many others also match.
To answer that question, cold case detectives must visit the company that made the cuffs almost 15 years earlier. In January of 2001, Pete Ackerley visits the manufacturing plant of Thomas and Betts. With the help of plant officials, Ackerley identifies the actual machine that cut the tabs used in the two cuffs. He asks the plant to do a production run. The key question: how many cuffs can the blade cut before it begins to wear down and its pattern of striation changes?
Then I took one sample, which consisted of five flex cuffs, every 100 through the first 1,000. After that, I took a sample, which again consisted of 5 flex cuffs, every 1,000 through a total production run, I believe, of 32 or 34,000.
Ackerley ships the samples back to Michigan. Barrier puts them under the scope and notes the rate of change in the markings.
What I found in my examination was that there was a significant change between 1 and 1,000. Based on that, all other things being equal in the manufacturing process, I was able to say that the two flex cuffs in question, the one that can be associated with Mr. Graham and the one from Jack Kirby, were in fact cut by the same machine and cut within 1,000 of each other.
Of the millions of flex cuffs produced by Thomas and Betts prior to Jack Kirby's murder in 1986, no more than 1,000 share these distinctive tool marks. For prosecutors, the link between David Graham and the cuffs used on Jeanette Kirby is clear.
Use your common sense, because these were used all over the world. What was the likelihood that all 1,000 possible matches were right here in Lansing? It paled to statistical insignificance.
The state believes the flex cuff evidence, coupled with Graham's prior attacks on other women, make their case. In April 2001, almost 16 years after the fact, David Graham is charged with murder and the death of Jeanette Kirby. The murder trial of David Graham opens on a Tuesday morning. Sam Smith presents the state's finding on the flex cuffs.
Like a fingerprint, you can see the pattern. You can show a jury a fingerprint here and a fingerprint there, and they can see with their own eyes that, gee whiz, those are exactly alike. The same with the tabs.
I don't know if I'll accept the 1,000 number beyond any reasonable doubt, but for the purposes of this, I still have to say, so what?
Gene Turnwald defends Graham. He focuses his efforts on attacking the flex cuff match linking Graham to the crime scene.
If someone drives a car off the assembly line in General Motors and does a crime with that car, what does that have to do with the very next person who drives the vehicle off the assembly line? Nothing. And that's essentially the argument being made with these flex cuffs being cut with the same tool, from the same manufacturer. Big deal.
The flex cuff link, however, is only one half of the state's case. The other half, Graham's criminal past, including an attempted kidnapping, where flex cuffs were found in the suspect's possession. Mark Blummer presents this part of the case to the jury.
I think it was essential to the success of the case that the jury understand that what we had here was a combination of him having access to flex cuffs and him being the type of person who had done this in the past and sure looked like he did it again.
The Graham case goes to the jury on June 21st. It comes back 3 days later. The verdict: guilty of murder in second degree. At the sentencing hearing, Jeanette's mother, Muriel, given a chance to address the court and the man who took her daughter's life.
She's had her day in court. Justice has been served, and that's what we've been fighting for 16 years.
David Graham will never have the opportunity to hunt and kill women again. For the murder of Jeanette Kirby, he received the maximum sentence under Michigan law: life in prison.
This is the Michigan State Police Long-Term Evidence Facility here in Lansing, and inside this facility we've got evidence from a multitude of cases go back many, many years.
Rick Schroeder is a cop with Michigan State Police.
it.